Our next presenters are Gaetan Charland and Donald Clementin. Gaetan Charland has been a reader and a student of the Urantia book since 1979. He started attending study groups in 1987 and started 2 study groups in 1999. One existed since a couple of years ago, and the other one is at his home and is still going on strong with many members. Gaetan became president of the Urantia Association International from 2003 to 2013, after serving terms as a local and national association president for many years. And he now serves as an associate trustee for Urantia Foundation. He has strong interest in study groups as well in any courses promoting teachers for the Urantia book teachings. And Donald Clementin has been an Urantia books reader since 2011. He's a co-creator of the website thechristexperiment.org and one of the instructors of the Christ Experiment School of Evangelists, which is designed to teach students the skills of effectively introduce the fifth epochal revelation. He's married and lives in Boston. Don has spent many years in outreach ministry prior to learning about the Urantia book revelation, and has an avid interest in responding to the call to develop teachers and leaders and fulfill Jesus' commission to spread the Master's message of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. In his spare times, he enjoys music and photography, and their presentation, well, they will say that themselves what they will do. Yes? It's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Nice presentation. I think you must have had some words to that. But anyway, hello, everyone. Welcome to the segment of the 2020 Urantiathon. I'm very happy to be here. I think it's a privilege that we have such technology and such opportunity to meet online and to share our own belief. In this 1 hour presentation, we will explore together how we can, in this time of crisis, use the gospel of Jesus to give comfort and minister to those in need. I have with me as co-presenter Donald Clementin, who is there. You can see probably his picture. Don has been very active and successful in sharing the gospel, the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, to many hungry souls. For me, Don is the epitome of that challenging quote we find in Urantia book in paper 196. Let me share with you that quote. I don't know do you see that quote?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so it should not be the aim of kingdom believer literally to imitate the outward life of Jesus in the flesh, but rather to share his faith, to trust God as he trusts God, and to believe in man as he believes in man. Jesus never argued about either the fatherhood of God or the brotherhood of man. He was a living illustration of the one and a profound demonstration of the others. Now, for me, Don is truly a representative of that quote that we find in the Urantia book. It's not always easy, but having get to know Don through the course in Christ Experiment ministry, which is called the School of Evangelists, and all the example he gave of how he was doing it really gave me comfort, because I'm the type of guy that like to see things happening. I try to be less intellectual in my way of learning. I prefer to see things in action by showing example. And when you see an example, it's a lot easier to accept in your own ways of living. At least you know a little bit how it is done. For me, the Urantia book is a little bit like a workbook. It's like we're doctor of the soul. And the book, the Urantia book, is like a book that we have to learn how to do things. So it's not meant for everyone. Not everybody wants to be a teacher or leader or a doctor of soul or whatever. So a lot of people are just curious. It's like when you go see a doctor, you're not interested about all the books that he read. You just want to be treated. So most of the world population at this time, that's what they want. They want to be treated. And so we're there for them. So I would like to open our discussion with these words from a wise Melchizedek, recorded in paper 99.
199. Voy a compartir con ustedes esta declaración.
So I think you must see that quote. Just a second, I got to see it myself. Okay, during the psychologically unsettled times, amid the economic upheavals, the moral crosscurrent, and the sociologic riptides, thousands upon thousands of men and women have become humanly dislocated. They are anxious, restless, fearful, uncertain, and unsettled. As never before in the world history, they need the consolation and stabilization of sound religion. End of quotes. So when we look at this quote, the words are more profound and hit home more so now than when they were written. Its description pretty much describes what we are seeing on television and expressed on social media. And is being expressed by doctor and healthcare worker. These profound problems have experts wringing their hands and then intellectual think tanks offering a variety of solutions to our world's social, economic, psychological, and political problems. In the midst of these crises, the Melchizedek says, what we really need is the consolation and stabilization of sound religion. This is nothing more than the saving message Jesus of Nazareth proclaimed nearly 2,000 years ago. It is the simple message of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. What would the simple message look like in everyday practice? Is it realistic to think that such a message could provide consolation and stabilization, not only to the individual who feel restless, fearful, and uncertain, but also actually change our planet into the beautiful place it has the potential to be for all humanity? Let's see how to turn this portion of our discussion, and I'll turn this over to my partner, Don Clementin. Don, it's up to yours.
Thank you, Gaetan. I appreciate your kind words very much. But you raised a interesting idea with those words of the Melchizedek, because people are facing many crises right now. And people are feeling dislocated, anxious, depressed because of what's taking place with the pandemic and social distancing and all the other upheavals. So the question really is, in a crisis like this, is it realistic to think that the gospel message has real power to affect change, not only in an individual's life, but also to change the course of our planet? Well, let's just take a moment to reflect on what sonship with God embodies. Think about this. When an individual comes to really recognize their spiritual and their temporal relationship with the universal Father, significant things begin to take place in their lives and in their whole outlook. The gospel message of sonship with God is not just a treatment, but it is the cure for what ails individuals and what ails humanity. So sonship is really more than mere identity, just saying, yes, I know I'm a son of God. Anyone can acknowledge that they are a son or a daughter of our incomparable Father. But when one reaches the level of faith sonship with God, exciting things do happen. As an illustration, we don't apply sonship to help reduce the swelling. You apply sonship to kill the bacteria. We're talking now about transcending, not merely coping with problems and anxiety. A sonship is not a crutch that we use to hobble along. Sonship is the cure for the broken limbs. You may recall very clearly Jesus' words to the young man. He had lost his father at an early age. He grew up with feelings of helplessness and inferiority, and he evidently spent his time as a loner out in the mountains, didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to have any social contact with anyone, and he was fearful. Jesus encountered him, and after acknowledging the young man's problems, in part, this is what he told him. He says, "This day, my son, you are to be reborn, reestablished as a man of faith, courage, and devoted service to man for God's sake. And when you become so readjusted to life within yourself, you become likewise readjusted to the universe. You've been born again, born of the Spirit, and henceforth will your whole life become one of victorious accomplishment. Trouble will invigorate you. Disappointment will spur you on. Difficulties will challenge you, and obstacles will stimulate you. Arise, young man, say farewell to the life of cringing fear and fleeing cowardice. Hasten back to duty and live your life in the flesh as a son of God, a mortal, dedicated to the ennobling service of man on earth, and destined to the superb and eternal service of God in eternity." Now, this young man, who avoided everyone, was so stirred by these profound truths given to him by the Master that he went from a bombed out loner, sitting in the mountains, helplessly grieving over his condition, to becoming a dynamic leader of the Christians in Crete. It's interesting, his name is Fortune, because he really did become fortunate that he had that encounter with Jesus. But this is an example of what sound religion and recognition of fatherhood, what it can do for an individual. That experience was a demonstration of the real power of sonship. And these experiences were not unique in the Master's life. Neither are they unique in our experiences. There are many listeners on this Zoom right now who can attest to the truth of the effects of how that recognition has made a profound change in their life and in their outlook on life. There was another occasion where it reminds me of Gaetan's words earlier, trying to get some action going and seeing some positive activity. There was an occasion where the apostles had become restless in their activities, and they had thought that this gospel message, this fatherhood of God, just wasn't getting anywhere. So the apostle John tried to maneuver Jesus to perform a miracle, to get some action going. He figured, yes, talking is good, but if they can see a miracle, then we'll really see some action. And as you know, Jesus didn't fall for it. But what he told John was to gather all of these sick and afflicted ones so that he could speak words of good cheer and eternal comfort. And in part, this is what the Master said to them. He says, if you could all be healed of your physical afflictions, you would indeed marvel. But it is even greater that you should be cleansed of all spiritual disease and find yourselves healed of all moral infirmities. You are all God's children. You are the sons of the Heavenly Father. The bonds of time may seem to afflict you, but the God of eternity loves you. And when the time of judgment shall come, fear not. You shall find not only justice, but an abundance of mercy. Verily, verily, I say to you, he who hears the gospel of the kingdom and believes in this teaching of sonship with God has eternal life. Already are such believers passing from judgment and death to light and life. And the hour is coming in which even those who are in the tomb shall hear the voice of the resurrection. Now, what was the effect on these folks who were crippled, afflicted, The account tells us, and many of those who heard believed the gospel of the kingdom. Some of the afflicted were so inspired and spiritually revivified that they went about proclaiming that they had also been cured of their physical ailments. Can you imagine that? Jesus performed no miracle, but these words had such a profound effect upon them that they said, I've been cured. Now, one might conclude that the master effected this change because he was a charismatic preacher, but that was not the case. We find in one of the papers somewhere, it says that Peter was a more charismatic preacher than Jesus. The master was effective because he believed in and knew the power invested in the saving message. And you and I, friends, can duplicate that same effect if we have faith in and trust in this saving message. I'll tell you that I am a recipient of the power of this. Just recently, I'm at work. This is last week, sitting at my desk, working from home. And I've been with my company for 17 years. And at 10 a.m. in the morning, the principal of the company and the manager come on. And they said, Don, we're sorry to tell you this, but as of today, your employment is terminated. And I was stunned because I had plenty of work to do. I wasn't prepared for it. And I'm almost 68 years old. So the idea of me jumping out there and trying to find a job in the midst of this pandemic with so many other young interns out there could easily throw me for a loop. But just recently, with a group of the other individuals who are in the Christ Experiment School, we were sitting down reading 195 on the faith of Jesus, and it described how the master, he was so fearless because he truly believed that nothing could harm him. As a son of God, he had no fears, and we know he had some hard problems growing up when Herod cheated his father Joseph out of his income after he had died, and Jesus made the trip there and wouldn't give them, that family, the money they deserved. They were impoverished for a good while. But having just read that, it inspired me so much that after I got over the initial shock that day, I was just as happy as a lark because I knew he would care for me. And it's not as if, you know, I'm a wealthy person. You know, I've been struggling just like everyone else to make a living. But this is the interesting thing. I've been a believer in the Bible and in Jesus for years. And I know prior to my true recognition of sonship, I would have been bombed out. I would have been depressed. I would have been figuring out, at my age, what am I going to do? But that saving message has had profound effects upon me. And it can have profound effects upon anyone who hears it. Now, I believe that there are many listeners who might be harboring doubts within. They wonder if this simple saving message is adequate to meet the needs and challenges of a complex modern world like ours that's beset by problems like this pandemic and social distancing and all the political problems we hear. Is this message adequate to meet that? Well, it appears that the 70 evangelizers that Jesus first sent out on their missionary journey, they harbored the same doubts. Even after they had been extensively trained in the school of evangelists, which was later referred to as the school of the prophets. Now, how do we know that they must have harbored doubts? Well, it's because of what Jesus' response was to them when they had returned after having a successful journey carrying the gospel message. In paper 163, it says this: the next day being the Sabbath, Jesus went apart with the 70 and said to them, I did indeed rejoice with you when you came back bearing the good tidings of the reception of the gospel of the kingdom by so many people scattered throughout Galilee, Samaria, and Judea. But why were you so surprisingly elated? Did you not expect that your message would manifest power in its delivery? Did you go forth with so little faith in this gospel that you came back in surprise at its effectiveness? So what about us who are holders of this fifth revelation, and especially the life and teachings of Jesus? Do we trust that this simple saving
Que
message
este mensaje salvador puede realmente cambiar nuestro mundo para lo mejor.
says this world has never seriously or sincerely or honestly tried out these dynamic ideas and divine ideals of Jesus' doctrine of the kingdom of heaven? And then on another occasion, the midwayers, who are the boots on the ground observers of world events over the past century since Jesus' ascension, they said this. They said, but we have often conjectured what would have happened in Rome and in the world if it had been the gospel of the kingdom which had been accepted in the place of Greek Christianity. Well, I, as well as you, no doubt, believe that our world would be a very different place for the better if after 2,000 years it had been showered with the saving message of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. So why don't we all go forth and do what's never truly been tried before? Let's shower our planet with the saving message. Let's take the dare as a united community of enlightened upholders of this revelation and do what's never been done before, and do it with unrelentingness. Shower this world with the saving message as the #1 priority, nonstop. Let our generation be the one where all defaults have stopped. We will live out loud the religion of Jesus and become characterized as a true Jesusonian brotherhood and sisterhood in the service to all people on this beautiful planet of ours, speaking these consoling, saving message to this generation that's really suffering badly at this time. And then we, us, right here, can pave the world for our world to enter the golden ages. And this has been the vision that we at the Christ Experiment have put all of our energies and resources behind in order to facilitate having a steady stream of teachers and leaders. That's why we developed the Christ Experiment School of Evangelizers, so we can see how we can deliver the message so that it has the same powerful effect to change lives with success that the Master and his early missionaries were able to do. Well, to tell you more about this school and why training is so important in our delivery of the saving message, I'll turn the program back over to Gaetan. He's one of the instructors in this school who, with his wife, Lene, are both translating the entire curriculum into French. And we hope sometime early next year to have this entire curriculum available to our French-speaking community. Also, he and his wife, Lene, were graduates from the very first class that we offered. So now, Gaetan?
Well, thank you, Don. Thank you. What a challenging message. When you hear this, could it happen if we really all together come together and learn how to share that gospel of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man? Well, probably you're a bit like me. Since you found the Urantia book, you tried everything you could to share the Urantia book. At first, we always want to share the Urantia book. And then we get to know, well, that doesn't work very well. And the Urantia book says, when you try something time and after time, and it always produces the same result, if you keep doing it and doing it, it's kind of a crazy thing to do, you know. So you're trying to find out new message, new ways. So when I first started going to conferences, I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to share those teachings. So my first experience was going to New York in 2000 when there was that conference at Staten Island where I met Moussa Ndiaye. And my friend Gaetan and I traveled to Africa to learn from a master teacher. But this was not enough. He lived in a Muslim country and was quite different from where I live, even after we took many courses from him. So I kept looking on, I kept studying, and I kept looking for ways to be better at sharing the teaching. But what type of teaching are we supposed to share? And at the time when I read the Urantia book, I was not that much interested in the life of teaching of Jesus. It's only later on that I get really hooked up to that, because I found that the Urantia book, the last part of the book, the fourth part, is where they show us how to do it. And we have a master teacher there. So one day, I was very skeptical about the Christ experiment thing, you know. It was quite a word, you know, Christ experiment. I said, what the hell are they trying to do, you know? So my wife had been interested in that course for, you know, for a few years, and she was, not the course itself, but she was following everything that we're doing. So when that course came out, I remember she was sitting at her computer and they worked side by side. We all each have our own computer side by side, and I was working on mine and she was working on hers. And then she started looking at the curriculum of that school of evangelists. So she started listening to the introduction. And so I had my ear, you know, like pulled over to her side. And I said, well, let's hear what these guys are saying. And I think at the time was Don speaking. And I started listening and I couldn't believe my ear. You know, I said, wow, you know, that sounds like something I need. And the more I listened, the more I got interested. And so my wife had already registered for the course. So, but I waited, you know, like I'm skeptical guy. So I said, well, I don't know yet, you know, so I'll see. But then it kept, you know, nagging me all the time. So finally I took the plunge and I went in, took the course. Of course, everything that says in the course, it applies to mostly Christian, you know, how you can convey those truths to a Christian community. So like in the United States, you have the perfect setup for that because you have many, many churches. And a lot of you that live in the States can go to church or still go to church, and you have, you know, tithes, and you probably also had what they call a Bible lesson, which I never had. You know, in Quebec with Catholicism, at the beginning, we're not allowed to read the Bible. So for me, the Bible was kind of something that I picked up later on in my life. But the course introduced me to a lot of ways that Jesus used that even after I read the life of teaching of Jesus a few times, I never catch on those, you know, because I'm not a teacher myself, you know, I'm not a professional. And, you know, I guess some people have ability to catch those little things that evade the mind of others. And probably those people are at Christ Expand. There are other people also, you know, if you go UBIS course, you're going to see good teachers there too. Urantia University, I'm going to take a course in September. They have also good teacher. When you really want to share the gospel, you got to learn everything you can. If you want to be that good doctor, well, you're going to read or attend all those courses that are available to make you the best one. Or don't you want to be the best one at doing what you want to do? Don't you really want to share those teachings with effectiveness? Don't you want to change the world? Don't you want to help the change happen, and especially in this time of crisis? So I took the whole course, and was I surprised what I learned? Of course, there are many things that I still need to go back and listen again to the course because they have to do with the Bible, and they have to do that if I meet people that really are into the Bible, how to bring them over to the Urantia book. And what I learned, but I said, how can I apply that to people in my own area that, you know, they don't want to hear nothing about religion? And one thing that I learned from Don while he was speaking about his own experience, sharing the gospel, which means the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, was that first you need to get acquainted with the people you're with. You need to go there a few times so people get to know you. You cannot just go in and say, hey guys, here's the truth. That doesn't work. You know, they'll kick you out. But from what I learned from Don, that he went there many times, those Bible study groups. And then after people got to know him, then they were more inclined to listen to what he had to say. And then he brought in little truths, you know, questions. What if? Well, what are the possibilities? You know, never imposing any truth. And I really loved the way he was doing it. So I said, how can I do that in my own backyard? You know, where I live, there's not that many church. And people, you know, like I say, they're not very open to, you know, listening about religion. But I am involved in service. And I believe all of us in our own way should be involved in service activity outside of the Urantia Book community, or else we become like a closed circle. We need to be open to the outside. So for my part, I've been involved through an affliction that I had many years ago with a health problem. I've been involved with this group that support people that have the same problem I had, panic attack and anxiety problem. And God knows if there is anxiety at this time. And I would say that most of the world now is very anxious about, especially since this pandemic, not only about catching it, but about, will I lose my job like Don did? Will I be able to pay the rent at the end of the month? What happened if one of the loved ones in my family catch it or dies or something happened? You know, there's all kind. What if I cannot meet other people anymore? And I know a lot of people that are stuck with that, you know, going on Zoom, it's good for a time, but you need that interaction, personal interaction with people. So very by coincidence, before this pandemic arrived, because I was involved in this other organization that catered to people that suffer some anxiety and all kinds of those problems, I'm one of their board members. So I start setting up virtual support group, but they were scared. You know, they said, well, if we do that, you know, the group that we have in person will be jeopardized. People will all want to go on Zoom. You know, they won't want to go in and meet person to person. And I said, no, don't worry about that. You know, that will help people that are far away. They cannot travel. They suffer from disability or bad weather or whatever. Oh, no, we're not ready for that. But I wrote down all the protocol. I set up everything in advance, and bang, the pandemic arrived. We could not meet in person anymore. I even had to help them revamp their website to make it more current to the present technology. Were they ever so happy when I says, next week, we're gonna have virtual group open to help those people. So in the space of 1 week, I had all those groups set up 5 days a week, 2 hours every day, one in the afternoon, the other at night. And for 3 weeks straight, I facilitated all those groups and trained all the new facilitators. And after, 3 months, I finally let go of my position as a facilitator and had someone to replace me. Well, you know, when I did that, I didn't do that for recognition, because when I took the Course of Christ experiment, what really impressed me is that saving message. I never focused on the saving message of the sonship with God and the brotherhood of man. Oh, I knew it intellectually. It was a nice, you know, phrase, fatherhood of God, brotherhood of man. Well, what is it in action? Well, what is it that when we really go into it, what does that mean? And I searched for that. And when I took that course, they really went into it. And for, I would say for months, it was there in my mind every day. And I was praying, God, please help me. I need to really have a sense of what this thing, this saving message means to me. What can I do with that? So when this pandemic arrived, I decided to go full ahead. Not for me, but to help those people, which I start thinking they're like my brother and sister. So if your brother, your true brother and sister, your blood brother, your blood sister, or your father is asking you to do something, would you refuse him? I don't think so, unless your physical brother or sister are not to your liking, but normally we love our family. So I was really seeing them as people needing my help because I could provide that help to them. And so even if I was at that time that it happened, I had another problem. I had a heart problem that happened nearly at the same time. So you see, when those things happen, usually those opportunities arise, there's all kinds of problems that arise also at the same time that could, stop you from doing things. Like Don, lose his job. So, oh, wow, what am I going to do? No money and all this. You could have just blamed everyone. Instead, you went back to the saving message and you saw an opportunity there. And it was the same for me. At the time that all this happened, I could say, no, I'm too sick to do that. I was going to the hospital at the time, taking tests for my heart and everything. I was not feeling well, but I kept going. And today I'm feeling fine. The thing is that when you have that saving message that motivates you, it's a powerful thing. It makes you active. It makes you find that energy that you never think you had. It makes you see things, idea that you never think you would have had. Of course, you just don't go in like this. I have a routine. I bet everyone here has a routine. Every day when I wake up, I meditate, I pray. And sometimes that lasts maybe 1 hour. I always start my day with a meeting with God. That is so important for us. And look at the evangelist that Don was speaking about, or even the apostle. How long did they study with the master before they went out to the world? Well, I think it was 4 months, every day, all day, and at night they would have discussion before they even went out. So how much time did we put in becoming a good teacher or a good disseminator? How much time? Or is it we only went to 2 study groups and we think that will do it unless we have a very good study group? So for us, we need to take courses. We need to learn from the best. Whether you take UBIS course, whether you take university course, whether you take School of Evangelist course, you should take them all and find out what's good for you. So for me, it made a great change in the way I see things now. I got different ways of sharing the teaching, different ways of sharing the Urantia book, different way of, serving my community. And what happened in what I do to help those people, I gain more confidence towards them. A lot of people are looking up to me now. They're calling me. So they're more inclined to listen what I have to say than if I would have tried that many years ago. And doing those group online, sometimes there were 50 people there. They're all suffering. And of course, because it's an organization that recognized by the government for the health department, we're not allowed to bring spiritual things in it. But we do have a prayer at the beginning, which is the Serenity Prayer. So I use that to introduce concept. And there are times where I would speak for about half an hour about the great value of truth, beauty, and goodness, to prepare their mind so they could ask questions. And to bring out this question, what if? That's what I learned at the School of Evangelists. What if? And most of the time what we do, we want to give them the truth right away. We want to tell them what it is. It doesn't work that way. We need them to ask questions If we want the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of Jesus to work in them, we need them to look for the truth. We need them to ask for it. We need them to, yes, what if? To find the possibility, to think about it. This is when their mind works at the best. So I could talk on and on about my experience with those groups and all the people. Even one of the animator, she got me to meet her brother when I was delivering to her equipment so she could have good Zoom animation. And her brother was talking to me, and first thing I know, he's talking to me about religion. And the other day, while I was attending a support group, last Monday that was, my screen at the back, because we had an event that's Christ Experiment, and I had a background where it says Christ Experiment. She looked at that and said, hey, what's that? Oh, I said, this is another meeting I went to. Oh, she said, my brother might be interested in that. So you see, you never know how it works. Maybe some people might not be interested, but they might know someone who is. So believe in the power of the gospel and take courses, be active. It's a time of opportunity. And I bet that each one of you has something special they can do. So why not use it to help your community, to get in contact with people on the phone, with Zoom, or even if you go out, wear a mask if you're scared, and meet those people and start talking to them, and then be the Jesus that you're supposed to be in some way. So I'm going to finish that, and after, if you have a few questions for Don or me, we'll be open. So I'm going to share last two quotes with you, which summarize what we are. Just a second. I close this one. Okay, this is it. So what an awakening the world would experience if it could only see Jesus as he really lived on earth and know firsthand his life-giving teaching. And who better than us? If not us, who then? Tell me. I'm always asking that question. If not me, who? If I'm waiting always for the next guy, it doesn't work. It's either me or I'm going to lose that opportunity for the rest of my life. And the last quote is the call to the adventure of building a new and transformed human society by means of the spiritual rebirth of Jesus' brotherhood of the kingdom should thrill all who believe in him, as men have not been stirred since the days when they walked about on earth as his companion in the flesh. This is a call for action. So here you go, gang. It's up to us. It's not for anyone else. So if you have any question or comments, be free. We're open. Thank you.
And people can ask questions via the chat if they want. It is open. And if it goes wrong, we will close it again.
If you don't ask questions, we got a long prayer, 10 minutes prayer. I know a good friend here that loves to have long prayer. Guy Perron, where are you? Or maybe you want to share your own activity. How do you help others in this time of crisis? How do you share the teaching? Maybe it's a time for you to share what, we learn through experience of others. I love hearing stories of people, how they shared the teaching. For example, I heard two while I was in Chicago, the foundation. A lot of you know John Hales. And for years, he went to that church in Chicago. And when that book that Mo published there, The Untold Story of Jesus, which is a super great book to give as a gift, he gave one of these books. I don't know how many, 50 or 60, Mo? You're there. Maybe you could answer that. You got your hands up, Mo. You want to say something?
I think he gave, Gaetan, I think he gave 60 books to members of his church.
And they were happy to have this gift, but he could not have done that many years ago. Gary Deinstadt also was a trustee associate. For years, he went to that group of all kinds of different religious people and never talked about the Urantia book. And I think he shared last year that most of this group now started a study group with him. So you see, you know, when you're with people for a while, they get confidence in who you are. They get to know you. They're not scared of you. This is what Don was telling me during that course. And I said, yeah, you know, we tend to forget these things because we want to go too fast. So
yeah. So one of the beautiful things is that when we take the teachings of the Urantia book and make them our own, we now possess them. So we no longer need to quote it or even bring it out. And this is what I have found when sharing these things with people. Well, I think I want to dispel a myth, and that is that the school that we have is only beneficial to Christians. The reason why we have focused on Christianity is because of what the Midwayers have encouraged us in paper 195. They speak of the problems that Christianity has, and they clearly acknowledge its bugaboos, but they also tell us that it's still a mighty religion that raises the consciousness of men and women. And they're kind of like the low-hanging fruit, because there's several things that you don't have to overcome with the Christian community. Number one, they already have a healthy respect and love for Jesus. Number two, they already believe in the ascension plan. And in many ways, they believe in the brotherhood, even though they don't practice it, but in principle, they believe it. So if they could capture the teachings of Jesus and get motivated as we are, we could end up having an army of individuals that could blaze this world. And so that's why we focus attention on them. But the principles and how to convey the teachings are the same with anyone. We have a method we call bridging, which is taught in the school. How do you bridge between what a person believes and the fifth epical revelation? So we teach those techniques, and they're all drawn from the master's techniques, so they can be applied to anyone. And so then now when we're talking with people, essentially we encourage, put the Urantia book away. The book doesn't make disciples, you see. It's we who have experience that can do that. And it's amazing the effect it can have on people. Since we're not getting any questions, I'll just share an example with you. I was sitting in a church study group, and we were talking about having faith in the gospel. And the question came up about going to heaven. And it's interesting because the pastor's wife had once manifested, because I tell them I have such a sure confidence in the life after this, that understanding that has banished my fear of death. But she says, Don, you know something, I believe in the resurrection too, but I just don't want to go under the ground. I don't want to be in that coffin, you know. So the reality is that love of the revelation or that reality of going to heaven wasn't realistic to her. So I said, you know, we need to talk about this more. Why don't we take some time and just do some experiments on what heaven could be like? And so I said, what are your concepts? And there was silence. So I said, let me tell you what I think heaven is going to be like. I said, isn't it interesting? Think about this. Our Creator has endowed us with a beauty for art, for music, for beautiful landscape, for horticulture, for painting. Now, it would be pathetic if He endowed us with these qualities, but He didn't have a clue about it Himself. Evidently, in the heavens, they must have everything that we have, but ramped up to a much higher level. So if we have better bodies. You remember Paul talked about, I don't know what body we'll have, but we will have a superior body. Think if our vision was much greater, our hearing was much greater, that we could hear more than 12 tones of music. What if we could hear 24? Imagine if there's color symphonies where angelic creatures paint in color. And think of this, the word universe comes from university. Think about how little we know. There must be incredible universities to attend where we are taught things that we could never conceive of. And you know something? Their minds were blown. They were like, wow. And it was like, I got exhilarated because they were so exhilarated. And where did I get this from? It's all from the Mansion World teachings. But I believed in it. You know, it's so solid to me, and it immediately transferred to them. And I never mentioned the Urantia book at all.
Hey,
Many of the groups, yes.
I've got a question when you've got a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, finish.
There's two person that needs a question. There's Marvin and there's Doreen. Don.
Okay, so I will, I'll just end it there. So that's what we can do with these teachings. They're yours, you know. We don't have to go forth as if we are a Urantia book religion. It's just you as an individual imparting to them the same thing that the master did when he talked, when he was traveling in Greece, and all of those tours he did, that's so beautifully illustrated in Mo's book prior to his ministry. He talked to all sorts of people, didn't matter who they were, and we can do that. I'm finished. Yeah.
Go ahead, Marvin.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks to both of you for putting this front and center. And I think many of us feel yearnings and feel callings, trying to get a sense of what it is we're supposed to do with the spiritual treasure in this revelation. And there's a passage I put in the chat box. I'll go ahead and read it. And this is Jesus speaking. And when he was teaching his followers, he said, "This gospel of the kingdom is a living truth. I have told you it is like the leaven in the dough, like the grain of mustard seed. And now I declare that it is like the seed of the living being, which from generation to generation, while it remains the same living seed, unfailingly unfolds itself in new manifestations and grows acceptably in channels of new adaptation to the peculiar needs and conditions of each successive generation, the peculiar needs and conditions of our time, our world, our culture. The revelation I have made to you is a living revelation, and I desire that it shall bear appropriate fruits in each individual and in each generation, in accordance with the laws of spiritual growth, increase, and adaptive development. From generation to generation, this gospel must show increasing vitality and exhibit greater depth of spiritual power." So my question to you guys and anyone else is, what are the peculiar needs and conditions of our generation? And how can the gospel be restated, re-expressed in a way that really speaks to where people are now? And one thought for me is related to its language. It's how we communicate. And one thought is that the male sort of dominated language, or the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man, I think it speaks to some people in some cultural contexts. And I think to others, it leaves them really quite cold and unengaged. And so the challenge for me has been, when I speak with people, who are sort of spiritual but not religious, or they're not steeped in the Christian language where kingdom and fatherhood and brotherhood are common to them.
Para
How do I-
ellos,
how-
¿cómo yo puedo,
How do I speak
cómo
to
puedo yo hablar con ellos? ¿En qué lenguaje?
them? I think we're getting a little interference. So how do we speak to them? And for me, the language of spiritual family, that we're sisters and brothers and we have a common spiritual parent across all cultures is
En
more
todas las
powerful
culturas
to use
es
in a
un lenguaje mucho más poderoso que debemos utilizar en sentido genérico, pero mi pregunta es en general, y esto es que, ¿cómo podemos refrasear este evangelio de la forma que vivimos y de la forma que lo expresamos y la compartimos
conditions of our
en formas
generation.
que nos lleva a las generaciones que necesitamos? Ese es un pensamiento. Y el otro pensamiento, yo creo que
When they say that Jesus spent much more time getting to know someone and loving them, and really relatively little time teaching or spreading the gospel, especially in personal ministry, when they were loved, they were receptive. So I think there's no shortcut to loving someone and getting to know them, caring about them. And when there's friendship, then we've understood the vernacular of their lives. We can speak their language and speak the gospel in a way that meets their needs, their particular needs. Just a few thoughts.
Yeah, let me address it.
Wait. We only have a few minutes left, so Doreen can ask the last question, and then we will go to the next presenter. Thank you, Don Clementin.
But I would say that Marvin answered his own question by saying you need to love people, be in service to them. Thank you.
Doreen, do you want to speak here?
Okay, I'm unmuted now, I can see that. Now, I wanted just to share something, and Gaetan would know, when they put on a conference, I think it was in 2002, and I went up to Canada to see the other Urantia readers. I'd never known anyone. And Guy Perron picked me up at the airport and took me out, and he said to me, Doreen, he said, I joined Toastmasters, he said, and then I started a Urantia Toastmasters group, and he said, I shared the book that way. And so when I went home, that's exactly what I did. I went to Florida, I joined a Toastmasters group, and all the speeches I made, I always found something from the book to put in to engage people. And I tell you that I had so many invites after the meetings to take me out to talk about how do I know what I know? And where did you get this information from? For many years, it was just wonderful. But the thing is, let the Spirit lead you. The angels always have led me to people. They would say, how come you're so friendly? And, you know, where does it come from? And just on and on. I can give you 50 stories, but one thing I could not mention, and I refrained from mentioning, I could not start with, well, Jesus, this, because people, I met people that were all different religions, and I knew, especially in the metropolitan area, they would run away from me if I started preaching in any way, mentioning something familiar like that. So it doesn't matter where you are, just do something nice, engage in people, and it works, it just works. I mean, I just let go of my self-consciousness, and that's how it began to work for me. And it's wonderful and absolutely beautiful. And just the last thing, I was on a plane traveling to California, probably for a meeting, and a gentleman was sitting next to me, and he said to me, I run a school in California. I know it was some sort of a religion, maybe some sort of Christianity. And he was head of the school. It was a university. And he said, I'm having so much trouble with the people that work for me. And we began talking, and I said to him, well, do you ever think maybe you're there for them? And just turned it around to let him think that he has something to offer, not expecting from them to offer to him. And I'll stop because I know time is up. Thank you very much for letting me share.
Thank you, Doreen.
Well, I want to take just a second to thank everyone to have listened to Don and I. It was a great opportunity that was given to us to present this presentation. Thank to Chris for asking, a last minute ask. Thank you, Chris. Great work. So thank you for your reflection, your comments. We truly appreciate them. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you both. And thank you for the wonderful work that is happening with the Christ Experiment. And you know, Gaetan, for your decades of great work. Everyone always wants to thank you, and I, of course, want to thank you also. Non-stop Gaetan has been, non-stop for more than 20 years.